Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, group publisher of Walls and Ceilings, and welcome to If Walls Could Talk. It's always an honor to have some time to talk with my good friend, Trent Cotney, partner of Adams and Reese. Trent, great to see you, and thanks for joining me.
Jill, it's great to be here.
So, Trent, there's a couple of big topics we need to cover today. That's something every contractor listening needs to get out their pen and paper and take some notes. First, let's
Mhm.
talk about oil prices and how that's affecting the industry.
Yeah, oil has the price of oil has some immediate impacts, right? So obviously it affects fuel. I know going to the gas pump, I'm paying for it. I don't have the most fuel efficient vehicle in the world. The
Yeah,
other thing
me
is
neither. I
freight.
live in Detroit.
Yep. So freight, shipping materials, things like that, that gets passed on through your material costs. But what contractors need to understand is that the majority of construction project products out there have some petroleum component. So
Mhm.
everything from asphalt to insulation to, coatings to you name it, there's usually a petroleum based product that is an input of that material. And what you're going to start seeing is it ticking up because the inventory that is being used to create those materials will be gone, and the products that are created or derived from petroleum, you're going to start seeing those prices increase. So one of the things, this is not our first rodeo, right? We've been through material price increases plenty of times before. Follow the
Yep.
same script, make sure that you got a price acceleration provision, make sure that you're bidding accordingly. Watch out for long-term projects and fixed prices. You could get bid if you don't have something in there to correct it. But this is a real world issue. And the longer that these prices remain inflated, the more that it becomes a concern, not only with, fleet cost, but also material and shipping costs.
Yep. Like you always say, the person with the best paper trail wins.
There you
So
go.
make sure we got get that taken care of. The next thing I want to make sure we talk about, Trent, is, data centers has been such a huge topic. Everyone wants to be part of it. Everybody wants a piece of the pie because these are huge. I mean, it's just huge projects beyond anything that anybody normally has worked on in the past. I was actually shocked to see one that was well over 200 acres, and it's hard to even wrap your brain around how big that is, what that entails. But what my question for you was earlier is like, what happens if these projects get abruptly stopped mid-project with something that huge? And you and I were talking about that, but please share your insight, what everybody needs to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So data centers are it's like the gold rush, right? I mean, everybody wants to be a part of it, whether you're a manufacturer or you're a contractor. And there's a significant amount of data center construction currently ongoing and being bid. The issue that I see is really a couple of things. One is we've already had some disputes arise over data center construction, and it issues primarily with a contractor not understanding what they're truly liable for. So keep in mind on many of these data center projects, like you said, they're enormous. They're larger than Amazon warehouses, right? They're huge. And many of them that I've encountered are also have either a truncated schedule or a fast track, which means that you're expected to move quickly. You're expected to, get things up and running. And in doing so, it's possible that you're not crossing the T's and dotting your I's. One of the issues that we're facing now is a contractor being blamed for failure of the building to meet certain R value and performance requirements that are contained in the plans and specs. Normally that's not in the purview of a contractor. It should be in the purview of the installer or the specifier of the design consultant. So one of the things that I want to make sure that our contractors do, regardless of, what trade or tier you're at, is not only focus on what your scope is, but what it's not, especially if you are on a truncated schedule, because mistakes happen and it's hard to correct them, especially if you're moving so quickly. So make sure you backfill that administratively, ask the right questions up front before you bid, and then make sure you're papering the file throughout the project. Now, the other thing we talked about, Jill, and this is what's really interesting to me, is
Yeah.
the technology itself is changing. So
Oh,
if you think
every
about
day.
historically, right, 10 years ago, whatever, our desktop could do, our phone could do about 500 times faster. The same kind of technology is going to be adopted with regard to the data centers and the servers that are being there. If we end up using quantum computing, we're going to need a fraction of the space that we need now. So it is entirely possible that in the near term, if that technology comes to fruition, that the owners, the developers, the end user of these data centers may decide that it's no longer feasible to have such a large footprint. And they may decide to terminate midstream. One of the things you need to watch out if you're a contractor is look out for what's known as the termination for convenience clause. This is a clause that allows the owner to terminate at any time for any reason. Okay, generally you get paid for the work that was performed and reasonable overhead and profit on that work, but you don't get paid for anything else. So it's important that you understand what you get paid for. It's also critically important that you have those same exact provisions downstream with your subs, because Jill, you could be in a situation where you get terminated, but you're still on the hook to your subs. And then the last thing I'll mention on this, Jill, is you have to watch out and make sure that you understand who's financing this project. Okay, are they well heeled? Do they have an escrow? Do they have funds in hand? Because if this is a shell company and that technology starts, making data centers in a large footprint no longer reasonable, they could easily just pull up their tent poles and move elsewhere. And that's my concern, is I don't want contractors being, hung out to dry in the event that technology shifts. So make money while you can, but be cautious, because this will fade pretty quickly. And the reason I say that is all you got to do is look at your phone right now, and that'll tell you how fast technology moves. So.
Oh, for sure. And Trent, you and I were talking about like the gold rush. I think that's a perfect analogy. But what if you're, a contractor who's really optimistic and you just ordered a whole bunch of material, and now things are slowed down or there's some sort of pause?
Yeah. So a handful of things, one is you want to understand how those materials are going to get paid for on the job. So I've had some data center projects that are DPO, a direct purchase order, where the owner is buying it. I've had other projects where they will pay, but you have to pay for storage, right?
Yeah.
You also want to work with your distributors and manufacturers to understand what's restockable. Is it possible to have them store a certain amount at a certain amount of, during certain intervals? But you need to plan that accordingly. If you have specially fabricated materials, you have significant exposure and risk. And I would suggest accelerated payment or prepayment in that case.
Yeah, because that sounds like huge risk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
With this big gold rush. Well, Trent, is there anything else that's making your phone ring right now?
It's overall, I think everyone I talk to is kind of just uncertain. I think there's mixed messages out there, and I don't know. I think work is still there. I think backlog is still strong. I just reviewed all the latest construction statistics, and everything looks good. I mean, there's a little bit of softening in the residential space, but backlog is still good. Future work looks good. We all need labor, but that's nothing different, right? But I think overall contractors are still just kind of concerned of what's going on out there. I think if we can resolve the Iran conflict and get oil prices back down, that'll help significantly. I'm hoping that we have a period of stability for the rest of the year once we get past that. But I think that's kind of what contractors are longing for, is just some stable ground so they can get their bearings and, start really working that backlog.
Sounds good. Stability is always a good thing. But roofing and construction has its own stability in many ways. But it's always good to hear your insight, Trent. And thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions, how do they find you?
Sure, they can email me, trent.cotney@arlaw.com, or hit me up on social anywhere at Trent Cotney.
Sounds good. And if anybody has any questions for us, it's roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com. And make sure you follow us on all our social media channels. Stay safe and healthy. We can't wait to talk to you soon. Thanks again, Trent.
Thank you, Joe.